look at that building and I'd see this big building, big tall building. It loomed over the park. It was sort of, now that I think, it was a pretty unfriendly sight. But I'll never forget, I don't know if it's still there, because they got rid of most of them, the Democrats in New York, they took them down, and the people live on the streets now. That's why you have a lot of the people in California and other places, they live on the streets. They took the mental institutions down. They're expensive. But I'd say, why does that building have those bars? Boy, it wasn't normal. You're used to looking at like a window. But this one, you look at it, all this steel, vicious steel, tiny windows, bars all over the place. Nobody was getting out. It's called a mental institution. That was an insane asylum. Designated Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization, and many others. It is. America is respected again on the world stage. It's another topic. Obliterated Iran's nuclear enrichment capability, and Operation Midnight Hammer was one of the most successful anyone's ever seen. CNN fake news. I don't know where they are. CNN. Anybody from CNN here? Fake news. Nobody wants to raise their hand anymore. They used to argue here. Now, if you're with CNN, you don't raise your hand. But they said, well, maybe it wasn't that successful, which I really was angry because these pilots took their life in their hands. 2 o'clock in the morning with no moon, dead dark, guns shooting at them. They went in with those beautiful B-2s, and every single bomb went down an air shaft and obliterated it. And CNN came out and said, well, maybe it wasn't, by a scam writer who wrote, fake stories, a lot of fake stories on other topics, right? That's when we did it. We said, that's a terrible thing. The pilots came back and they said, we hit everything. They did a great job. Then on top of that, we launched from a submarine about 30 Tomahawks on top of everything else. The place was obliterated. CNN said, well, maybe it wasn't that bad. Turned out it was worse than it was. You know who could tell you that? The Iranians would tell you that. Because if they do anything, they're going to have to start a brand new place. But they did an amazing job. That was like what we did with Venezuela. I mean, nobody's ever seen a military operation like that. Ended 8 unendable wars in 10 months. These were unendable wars. Cambodia and Thailand fighting for years. Kosovo and Serbia. The Congo and Rwanda. Pakistan and India, they were really going at it. 8 planes shot down. They were going to go nuclear, in my opinion. The Prime Minister of Pakistan was here, and he said President Trump saved 10 million people and maybe much more than that. They're both nuclear countries. Israel and Iran. Egypt and Ethiopia were going to fight over a dam, and I got them to stop. I still got to work it out, because they put a dam up in Ethiopia that stops the flow from a little river called the Nile. I always think of the Nile being in Egypt, beautiful Nile with the pyramids, but they put a dam up. You know who paid for the dam? The United States of America. It's the biggest dam, I think, in the world. They put a dam up. I said, how did you let that happen? Why would we have done that? We financed it, this country. I don't know. Maybe it was a Republican president, but I don't think it was. I think it was a Democrat. But what a terrible thing. So Egypt basically is, they don't have enough water in the Nile. And they use that for a lot of things, including entertainment and travel and tourism and everything. I mean, I don't know. They got a big dam. I got to work that one out now, too. Armenia and Azerbaijan. President Putin told me, I cannot believe you settled that war. I've been trying to settle that war for 10 years. Armenia and Azerbaijan. They were fighting it for many, many years. And I ended up getting the heads of both countries in my office. The beautiful Oval Office, much more beautiful now than it ever was. And one sat on one side the other. He said, I've been the head of Azerbaijan for 22 years, and for 22 years I've been killing his people. And the other gentlemen are both very good guys. He said, I've been here for 7 years, and for 7 years I've been killing his people. And they started over there, and within an hour they were next to each other, and by the time we ended, they were hugging each other, and it's been a great peace, Should have gotten the Nobel Prize for each war, but I don't say that. I say millions and millions of people. And don't let anyone tell you that Norway doesn't control the shots, okay? It's in Norway. Norway controls the shots. So we have nothing to do with it. It's a joke. They've lost such prestige. That's why I have such respect for Maria doing what she did. She said, I don't deserve the Nobel Prize. He does. When she got it, they said, wow, that's amazing. I thought President Trump would get it. President Trump deserves it. He ended up 8 wars. How nice, right? She's a good woman. Got all 20 living hostages returned to their families, and the remains, they all came out. We got the 20 living hostages. We got the 28 hostages. They have one left that we think we know where it is. Amazing. Looked like we weren't going to get anywhere near that. Now they've gotten almost. And more importantly, we got many more, hundreds. We got them all. If we didn't do it, you wouldn't have had, most of those people would have been dead. I don't know if that's covered properly, but the 20 is great. They were the last ones. I always said the last 20 are going to be hard, but we got them. We got the last 20, and we got close to 28 of the bodies of the dead. And to those parents, it was just as important as getting their son back alive. They were almost even more intent on they knew their son was dead. They wanted to get the body. I got him back. We just created the Board of Peace, which I think is going to be amazing. I wish the United Nations could do more. I wish we didn't need a Board of Peace, but the United Nations, with all the wars I settled, the United Nations never helped me on one war. I mean, I guess I'm not blaming them. I didn't call them to help, but I got, the presidents and prime ministers together. We knocked heads. We got along, and they liked me. I liked them. Every single one of them nominated me for a Nobel Prize. Every one of the wars, among many other people, nominated me for a Nobel Prize. But Putin told me, I cannot believe you got this war settled. I worked on it for 10 years because it's his territory. Rescued 83 American hostages and citizens detained from abroad without paying a lot of money. Paid no money. Apprehended terrorists responsible for the Abbey Gate bombing that claimed the lives of 13 U.S. service members in Afghanistan, the lowest point in the history of our country. That was a Biden disaster. I was getting out, but I was getting out with dignity and strength. We were the boss. We were the boss. They wouldn't do a thing against us. And this very stupid person got in, and what a shame. They should have left from Bagram, which is the big military base, which has hundreds of acres around it. Should have left from Bagram. Terminated visas of Hamas sympathizers and deported pro-jihad foreign nationals. Got NATO members to agree to raise defense spending to 5% of GDP from 2%, and they paid the 5%, and they didn't pay the 2%. And by the way, I did more for NATO than any other person alive or dead. Nobody's done for NATO. And I think for the most part, they'll tell you that. I think you could ask the Secretary General about that, but he said it a lot. I've done more for NATO than anybody, and I see all this stuff, but NATO has to treat us fairly, too. The big fear I have with NATO is we spend tremendous amounts of money with NATO, and I know we'll come to their rescue, but I just really do question whether or not they'll come to ours. I'm just asking. Just saying, right? You remember during the debate? Just saying. Signed $1 trillion investment in U.S. military. And next year, we hopefully will go to $1.5 trillion. We're building battleships that are 100 times more powerful than the battleships of World War II, which are those big, beautiful things with the guns. I said, what about bringing them out of dry dock? They said, sir, what we're building will blow them away. Think of it. These ships are 100 times more powerful than the battleships that you see on Victory at Sea. Do you ever see Victory at Sea? What a great thing that is to watch. Renamed the Department of Defense into the Department of War, which everyone loves, by the way. Signed landmark critical minerals deals with Australia, Malaysia, Thailand, Ukraine, Japan, and many others. We're going to have so much rare earth. It's actually not that rare. Getting it processed is rare, but there's a lot of rare earth. There's a lot of earth around, I can tell you. withdrew from the corrupt World Health Organization where we were paying hundreds of millions of dollars a year. So we were paying $500 million a year, and China was paying $37 million a year. I said, why aren't we paying the same as China? They said, well, nobody asked. I said, China's got 1.4 billion people. We have 350 million, probably with all the illegals. China probably knows more accurately. But we have much smaller in terms of the number of people. We have a much more powerful military, but we have much smaller. I rebuilt the military during my first term, by the way. And while they gave away a lot to Afghanistan, the Taliban, which was just horrible seeing them. Every year seeing them do that military down some dirty street is a disgrace. But while Biden gave a lot of it away, it's a tiny fraction compared to what we did. I rebuilt the military, and now we're continuing to build it. And bigger and better. We need it. Peace through strength. But we withdrew from the corrupt World Health Organization. So I remember we were paying $500 million. They were paying 37 or 39 million. And I said, how come? So I withdrew, and they called, we'll give you the same deal that they had. I said, well, it should be less than that, because if they're at 37 and you have 3 times, 4 times the number of people, even maybe 5 times, I don't know. So it should be less, but I didn't want to chisel around. And I thought about it. So I could have taken 500 million to 37, and everybody knew it. I chose not to do it because it was actually very popular when I got out, because they were terrible. And so I chose not to take that deal. First thing Biden did is go back into it. You know what he paid? More than 500 million. So I actually called them. I said, you can buy it for less. You can make a deal at 37. There's no reason to pay 500. They didn't care. They paid more than 500. Did you know that? They paid more than 500 million. I made a deal at 37. I could have had 37. They were public about it. We'll give you the same deal that China has for 37. And they paid 500 million. They paid $500 million. That's the way you ruin a country. And it's the same attitude that, you have on everything else with these people. They were terrible. The anti-American UN Human Rights Council we ended. The UN Relief and Works Agency we ended. And the fake Paris Climate Accord, which was a ripoff of America, where we had to pay $1 trillion and they were paying nothing. China didn't kick in until 2035. We kicked in immediately. We were supposed to pay $1 trillion. Russia went to a standard of 1991, which was a dirtier standard. But we had to pay top dollar. So I terminated that. Another rig. We ended the woke lunacy and restored common sense, abolished all discriminatory diversity, equity, and inclusion DEI policies throughout the federal government and the private sector. They're gone, everybody. They're gone. Terrible. Terminated the Green New Scam and ended the insane electric vehicle mandate. I love electric vehicles. That caused me a little problem with a man named Elon. But he understands, and he's a good guy. We get along. But I said, Elon, we can't have all electric cars. We just can't do it. I like the electric cars. I like his car. But in particular, I like his car. But we can't do that because some people don't want an electric car by 2030. And to build the power stations all over the country would have cost $4 trillion. $4 trillion. That's more than any country has. If you got China, the United States, and everyone, you couldn't do it. And it would have taken years. And yet they were supposed to be switching over electric vehicle mandate. Some people don't like electric cars. Some people want hybrids. Some people want regular gasoline-powered cars. We have more gasoline than anybody. And now with Venezuela, we have 62% of the market when you include Venezuela. So I ended the Green New Scam, and I ended the insane electric vehicle mandate. Now you can buy a gasoline-powered car, a hybrid, and you can buy a electric vehicle. I mean, if you want electric, you can buy it. Make a good deal on them right now because they made a lot of them. Permanently stop Joe Biden's ridiculous CAFE standards. That's having to do with the environment. So ridiculous. Cancel the EPA's absurd, totally absurd tailpipe emission standard, which made you spend hundreds of thousands. It made for hundreds of thousands of cars. The numbers, the cost numbers were incredible that the consumer has to pay. Imposed 25% tariff on all foreign automobiles and 100% tariff on Chinese cars which don't come into the country because of tariffs. Only because of tariffs. We didn't have tariffs, you wouldn't have any car dealers. We have now more car factories being built in the United States than ever before because of tariffs. If they take those tariffs away, China will eat our lunch. They'll take all of our car business. Now, there's another way of doing it, but it's more cumbersome, et cetera, et cetera. I don't want to scare you, but it's much more cumbersome, not as good for national security as this. We have a perfect system right now. We're making a fortune. We've never been stronger, and I hope the Supreme Court does the right thing for our country, because if they don't, it's such a problem. It's just so, it would be so sad. We're doing so well because of tariffs. And the people that are heading up the lawsuit, like there's a guy named Leonard Leo, bad guy, and people that are very China-oriented and foreign car-oriented and foreign business-oriented, but in particular China, they're suing to get rid of tariffs because they don't want tariffs, like Coke. Coke has businesses outside of the United States. If you have them outside, you don't want tariffs. But because of tariffs, they treat us well. Without tariffs, they would treat us very badly. As you saw for many years, they respect us more now than they ever have respected us, by a lot. And revoked the California emissions waiver to stop San Francisco communists from regulating the automobile industry and destroying automobiles and the industry in the nation. I was with Bill Ford of Ford Motors. I was with all the people at General Motors the other day, and they are making more money and building more cars than they are doing so good. All because of tariffs and what I've done. And they're building their plants all in the United States. Reopened ANWR for drilling. That's a big deal. Launched a massive Alaskan pipeline project to export natural gas to Asia. We made a deal with South Korea and with Japan that gives us money, the likes of which nobody's ever seen before. Signed executive orders to end Biden's war on coal and I say clean, beautiful coal. I never say the word coal. It has to be preceded by the words clean, beautiful coal. And put minors back to work. The minors love Trump. I think I got 100% of their vote. We banned transgenders from the military. We don't want transgender in the military. Ordered reinstatement of patriots expelled from our military with full back pay. So we had some people that were terminated and they're coming back into our military. Fired the woke boards of visitors at our military service academies. The boards of visitors were run by radical left, maybe communists, maybe not, but they were still heavily radical left and they were bad for us. Signed an executive order to remove anti-American propaganda from federal museums and national parks. Required the federal employees to return to work in person or be fired. We don't want them sitting in their home or their bed working. We want them in an office that we're paying for in Washington, D.C. or wherever it may be. And we've largely taken care of that mess. That was crazy. I guarantee you they're out on the ball fields. I guarantee you they're out playing golf. And you can't run a country or a company that way. I think it's happening even so with countries and companies. But we had so many of our federal workers that wouldn't come into work. Signed an order banning all government censorship and restoring free speech. Made it the official policy of the United States government that there are only two genders. This was not a tough one. Two genders. Can anybody guess what they are? Male and female. I think the Democrats know that too, but they refuse to admit it. Ban the use of puberty blockers, hormone injections, and other chemical and surgical mutilation of children. Can you imagine saying this 15 years ago? That we banned the use of puberty blockers, hormone injections, and other chemical and surgical mutilation of our children. You know, when I say it, do Do I have to say that? I actually asked my people today. Yes, sir, because people, it's where the country went. Banned men from playing in women's sports. Big Supreme Court case in that. I mean, I can't believe it. Some of the justices were fighting hard for men to be able to play in women's sports. A couple of them. I can't imagine it, but I think anybody that rules that way should lose a lot of credibility. But we banned men from playing in women's sports. All you have to do is look at the records. Look at weightlifting records. Look at swimming records. Look at track and field. It's not fair. It's very demeaning to women. Banned transgender ideology and critical race theory from our schools. Secured unprecedented settlements with Brown University, Columbia University, and many other colleges, including the University of Pennsylvania, where I went, the great old Wharton School of Finance. To restore fairness and merit, we're working with Harvard right now. They've been very anti-Semitic. Terrible what they've done. And we'll see what happens. I hear we have a deal, but who the hell knows with them? They have a lawyer that wants to show how hot he is. Ended taxpayer-funded student loan forgiveness for radical left and anti-American activists. Can you believe it? Began the process of abolishing the Federal Department of Education and returning education back to the states. And Linda McMahon is doing a fantastic job. Ended Joe Biden's weaponization of our government and removed his hand-picked radical left Marxist prosecutors from the Department of Justice, like deranged Jack Sixsmith. He's a sick son of a bitch. They gave me the worst of the worst. And here I am. How did that happen? How did that happen? He's a sick guy, and Letitia James is sick, and Alvin Bragg is sick. They're sick people. And others. Fani. You can't call Fanny. She doesn't like it. She wants to be called Fani. Fani Willis. I won. Can you imagine putting somebody through that? And then if I suggest that somebody may be guilty of a terrible crime, oh, he's weaponizing government. Trump is weaponizing government. It's terrible. Can you imagine? They say to me about weaponize. I don't weaponize anything. But what they did to me, nobody ever went through what I went through. And here I am in a place called the White House. It's a beautiful place. Who would have thought, right? Signed legislation to cut all taxpayer funding to woke and biased NPR and PBS. And they're sort of gone now, I guess. I heard they closed up. They were terrible. They were so unfair. They were so terrible. Officially reinstated Columbus Day. I like the name Columbus Day. The Italian people are very happy about it. Remember, when you go to the voting booths, I reinstated Columbus Day. That was an easy one. Christopher Columbus. Cut Social Security wait times by 50%, serve 65% more Social Security recipients by phone, and are on track to doubling the service and performance compared to the Biden administration. We're 2.5 to 3 times better and faster. Slash VA claims backlog to the lowest number ever recorded. Created Trump accounts starting with $1,000 for every newborn baby. This is something that's become so popular. And I give Mr. and Mrs. Michael Dell Computer, who put in $6.25 billion, started with nothing. And he actually invested all that money to give to kids so that when they grow up, they have an account that might be worth a lot of money. It'll be riding with the markets. And, they can, at 20 years old, 21 years old, they could have $100,000. They could have a lot of money. That's going to be amazing. But I give a lot of credit to Mr. and Mrs. Michael Dell. Signed AI executive order to ensure the United States dominates the future of artificial intelligence. So we're leading China. We're leading the whole world. We're producing more electricity than we ever have because I'm allowing every one of those plants to build their own electric facility. We're giving them very, very fast approvals, unlike Los Angeles with the fire. So the federal government, I want to give a lot of credit to Lee Zeldin. The hardest approval for the 20,000 houses or more that burned down in Los Angeles because they didn't have the water. They didn't allow the water to come down from the Pacific Northwest. They routed the water into the Pacific Ocean. So we had no water there. No, he had. I would say open up the water. Open it up to the governor, to the mayor. They didn't want to do it. They wanted to protect a tiny little fish that's, I said, how can you have a fish when you don't have any water? It was just an excuse, I guess. But it's amazing. We took 20,000 houses, and Lee Zeldin, the toughest permit is from the federal government. Within 2 weeks, every single permit was given to the people to build their houses. Then you have the incompetent mayor of Los Angeles. He's neutral, who decided to go to Africa during the fire. So you have this incompetent mayor, and I had it out with her the night when I got, right after the fire, I went there. She said, we're working on it so that we can have everybody starting to build within 2 or 3 years. Remember that? I said, you mean 2 or 3 days? No, I mean 2 or 3 years. And the place went crazy. Well, they still haven't gotten their permits. But every federal permit, every single one has been given a year ago. And Lee Zeldin has done a great job. And he's done a great job in the approval of all these big plants and factories and all of the electricity that they're creating for themselves. I said to Zuckerberg, I said to all of them, I said to Jeff Bezos, I said to everybody. Mark Zuckerberg couldn't believe it. He said, where are we going to get all the electricity? Because you need double the electricity that the country currently makes just to fire up those big plants. I said, well, nobody can do that. So what we're going to do is let you make your own electricity. Nobody believed it. And I said, we're going to get you fast permits. So we get them within 2 weeks. And they're coming up with some of the most incredible electric plants you've ever seen. So each one of those massive buildings, AI or otherwise, is building their own electricity. They're building their own plant. And it's incredible. Many of them are under construction already. They're going to have, we're leading AI, and we're leading China by a lot. Established a MAHA presidential commission, banned many artificial food dyes, as you know, issued new vaccine recommendations, and created new real food pyramid. And Bobby and Dr. Oz have been incredible. Provided $12 billion in aid for American farmers. Just gave them $12 billion in aid because they got screwed by other nations. And the number of drug dealers have fallen every single month since I took office. Drug dealers are way down in the United States. And that's a small version of what's sitting right there. That's just a small version. We took a country that was dead, and it's the hottest country in the world right now. And that's after 1 year. So let's go.